Hey everyone, welcome back to the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm Bobby Sylvester, and Tags is back this week. I hope you're refreshed from some time away, man.
I'm doing well, man. And I gotta say that I did listen to the podcast with Jason that you had on, and the reason they canceled Mike and Mike is because they were making way for the unverified Mike and Mike show. So don't say that they canceled it for a reason, Jason. I can't wait to be on next time when you hop on the show.
Now, I know that you thought we were going to skip on all this, Tags, but, it was really good timing for you to go on vacation, by the way. I think the audience deserves, however, to hear your reaction about losing to me for the second straight season in draft rankings expert accuracy.
Yeah, no, it was funny because I heard that on the show, and I hadn't even looked at the article until that happened. And finding out Jake was number one, I was like, that's all I need to know. It's all downhill from there because Mr. Seeley will let you know that he is number one and you are not. So it didn't really even matter where I finished from there because I was going to hear it from Jake. And then when you said that you beat me, I was like, well, I'm losing at life right now.
You should have expected it though, right?
Yeah, the thing is so my rankings are different than projections, and I want to be clear about that because rankings and projections are two different things, and I always approach my rankings in a way that I would draft players, where it's like, if I went by my actual projections, I don't know where I would finish in the competition, but projections are more of like a realistic outcome, whereas like my rankings, they have to account for some upside built in, so I might take a player who's projected for less if he has higher upside. So there's difference in rankings and projections. So that's all fair.
Yeah.
But I'm still not happy I lose to you at anything.
I was going to say the same thing, man. I think that's what it really came down to, is that you rank, with that in mind. And I think you probably would have beat me by 5, maybe 10 spots. We both would have been top 30 out of 130, which is, really great for the show. Joining us today, and I'm really excited to hear who her favorite players are, is Marianne Lee of Sirius XM Fantasy, co-founder of Her Fantasy Football, and she does videos for Fantasy Alarm. Brandon, thanks for coming to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super pumped. I love this time of year because this is where we find out what everyone's research was telling them, and we have no idea what the other people have been finding, so this is exciting.
Thank you also, by the way, for getting stuck on a train because that gave me 30 extra minutes to take a bath nap.
What the hell is a bath nap?
A bath nap is where, Tags, you wouldn't know this, it's when, you play sports so hard and so rough that your body's just completely exhausted. It's the only thing that can make your body feel better. So yesterday I was playing I don't know what you would call it. It's technically pool volleyball, but it was also like wrestling and like an NFL kickoff. And, it was pretty extreme. So my body's torn up today and I needed that. So thank you, Brandon.
This sounds awful. Like Brandon, I don't know what your bath life is like, but mine is non-existent. I haven't fit in a bath since I was 6. So I literally have not taken a bath. Realistically.
You gotta get the garden tub, man. You're doing life wrong.
No,
and you gotta get it so okay, build a custom home. And what you do is you open up the floor so that you can have a bath underneath. And then you just close up the floor so nobody knows. It's under your carpet. And then when everybody leaves, you just watch a movie in your garden tub.
What is happening here? What is happening? Brandon, help me.
I live in a 1-bedroom in New York City. Having a bath, period, is a luxury. So I can't imagine custom anything. Custom means I painted in my apartment. That's
That's
whoa,
awesome.
Whoa.
We live in totally different worlds, Brandon. I can't even, if I screamed as loud as I could, I don't think anybody would hear me out here. Our neighbors are so far away.
Bobby has turkeys in his backyard.
Oh, that's so cool. See, I'm actually a really weird person. I love being either in New York City or out in the middle of nowhere. Nothing in between. I'm not a suburb person at all, which I was raised in the suburbs, but I would love to live on acreage by myself alone or in the middle of New York City.
It's nice. And working from home, I don't really have to deal with people. I go play softball. I go play war ball, which is the pool volleyball I was talking about. That's pretty much, I go to church. That's it. That's all I interact with people. And then, people who like fantasy football who come on our show.
Wait, can I ask you guys a question? It happened while I was on vacation, actually. We were on a walk with my son, who is now 17 months, and my wife's with me, and I grabbed a beer before we went on our walk, and I set it in the stroller, and we're walking down the street, and I have a beer in the stroller. Is that bad etiquette?
That's drinking and driving.
She told me that. She's like, I don't know if that's proper. I'm like, I don't see what's wrong with it. I'm taking my kid for a walk. I'm getting some exercise. What's the big deal? I understand the whole drinking in public thing, but is that bad etiquette on my part?
I don't know, man. I don't have a problem with it. I'm sure some turd would, but you're fine.
Is it legal? Not with the baby stroller. I don't care about that, but I think just can you walk down the street with an open container?
I don't think it's legal anywhere, to be honest with you, and I found that out the hard way. Vegas? Actually, in New York City.
He's Mike Tagliere. He can do whatever he wants. Let's be real.
I got to share a story with you guys, and the listeners are going to love this story, by the way. So my brother and my dad, before he passed, he wanted to take us to Yankee Stadium. Like, he had cancer. He knew he was going to go, and he always wanted to take us to the old Yankee Stadium. It was the last year it was up. So he flew me and my brother out there to go, and we started walking on the town after the game and everything. And we were like, oh, we want to go find CBGB's, the underground rock place. Was like, there's t-shirts on it and everything. We wanted to go visit it. And we walked through New York, and we grabbed the paper bags, put it around the beer like you would. And, these cops stop us, and they gave us a ticket for drinking in public. And I was like, well, I had a bag over it. And they're like, that doesn't make it legal. And it was just like, my brother, he refused to pay it. And he was just like, that's ridiculous. And the cops at the same time were like, hey, could you tell us where CBGB's is? And they're like, yeah, it closed down. And we're like, well, this sucked. It was an experience that I learned that no matter even if you have a bag over your beer, it's still drinking in public.
Yeah.
Yeah, and New York City's really strict about that too.
All right, guys, we're going to be talking about which players we're willing to reach for today. And so basically the players we're most excited about, right? Like usual, we're going to go round table here, give off 5 players we love enough to reach for. Before we do that, though, we have a few mailbag questions I want to cover. And I need to know first, Brandon, who did you end up taking in the first round of the Scott Fish Bowl?
Yeah, you know what? I put up a poll because I'm having a very difficult time. And I really think it is splitting hairs in terms of the top 5 running backs in terms of, who is going to be the best this season. So I don't really have a definitive opinion. And I know that sounds horrible to say. How could you not have a definitive opinion?
That's so unlike you, too.
I know. But they're all good. I mean, whatever. Whenever people are asking us fantasy advice and they ask us things about the first 5 picks, I'm like, you'll be fine. Don't worry.
Yeah.
For me, I went David Johnson. I just feel like he's the freshest out of all the guys, had the least amount of touches. His injury does not concern me whatsoever. It was a freak wrist injury. His legs are fine. The guy was less than 10 yards less in receiving than Devontae Adams in 2016. Okay? That is how good he was from receiving. That's not even counting the 1,200 rushing yards that he had. Double-digit touchdowns. He is insane. So I just felt like I like that. I'm a little worried about Le'Veon Bell's durability this year. I'm kind of alone on that. Just the 370 touches thing. Only one running back in the last 10 years has had a better season the second year after having 370 touches. That was Ray Rice between 2010 and 2011, if you can believe that. And you know who has over 370 touches the year before? Poor David Johnson, and then he got hurt. So the curse lives on. So I'm a little bit worried about that. Todd Gurley, there's just so many weapons. I'm not going to go Barkley number 1. I just won't do it. And I like Zeke, but I do think there's a PPR issue. And if you have a problem with David Johnson and his offense, how do you not have that same problem with Dallas? So,
That's a good point. Yeah, I think you're right. All 5 of those top 5 running backs are awesome. And I'm a little concerned about Le'Veon Bell as well. I mean, it's kind of hard to be because he's been so amazing for so long, but enough so that I would definitely take Todd Gurley over him. Tags, where do you stand, man?
Yeah, I'm with Gurley. I think Gurley's a risk-free running back at the top of the draft. And it's not to say that he's going to finish number 1 because running backs just traditionally don't finish number 1 year over year. But when you're weighing in risk-reward, like Le'Veon Bell, there's a risk of him holding out. There's a risk of him injuring himself. Like, he's been a little less durable than Todd Gurley. Some people pointed out Todd Gurley has a floor too. Go back to 2016, but that's not really fair because you were playing for Jeff Fisher. And as you guys have learned on this podcast, coaching absolutely freaking matters. And if anything, McVay will change the offense a little bit to make sure that it's not predictable in 2018. Yeah. So I have no concerns about Gurley. I actually took Saquon Barkley at number 5 in my draft. The big 4 were gone: Gurley, Bell, and Ezekiel Elliott. And David Johnson, but I would take Saquon Barkley over David Johnson.
It's close for me.
I'm legit concerned about David Johnson's offense. I'm not concerned about the player, but the defensive-minded head coach, potentially a rookie quarterback. The offensive line is trash. We saw David Johnson start trending downward in the 2016 season when it came to running the ball. Will he be used as much in the passing game with Larry Fitzgerald and Christian Kirk over the middle of the field? I don't know. He's still going to be valuable. I'm not saying I think he's a mid-first round pick.
Even if he goes backward, we talked about this a couple shows ago, even if he goes backwards 25% of what he did, he still would have been the number 2 running back last year, right? So, obviously he was hurt and everything, but if I had to bet on any running back getting 370 touches this season, it's David Johnson, and then maybe Saquon Barkley, and then Gurley and Bell, Elliott start to come into the conversation.
Well, my thing is, I think Mike McCoy, this is his last stand. And as an offensive coordinator, he likes his running backs. He likes his tight ends. I think there's a little bit more to look at here. And I like the fact that Sam Bradford and Josh Rosen have very similar play styles. So the playbook can be consistent throughout both of them. I'm not worried about it going in and out. They're the same guy, in my opinion. And I feel like they're both an upgrade from what they had last year. And frankly, I think borderline an upgrade from 2016 in terms of quarterbacking. So I really genuinely believe that this offense isn't as bad as other people think. And that's why I think we're going to get a discount on David Johnson.
I drafted Aaron Rodgers at 10th overall, and I was so pumped he dropped to me. And I know that some people are gonna, frown at that, but it's a super flex league, and you've got 6 points for a passing touchdown. So I was gonna take Rodgers at 1-1. I thought he wouldn't make it to me at 110, but he did, and then I got Beckham on the turnaround. So pretty pumped about that.
Yeah, no, Aaron Rodgers is masterful in this one. He outscored every other quarterback in my projections in this actual scoring format by over 50 points. So he was in a tier by himself. So Rodgers I would have considered, I think, around 1-7, 1-8, depending on who was there. So 110, yeah, absolutely.
Can you explain what the Scott Fish Bowl is, by the way, Tags?
So yeah, Scott Fish, he's an analyst in the community, works for Fanball, and he puts together this every single year, and he keeps growing and getting bigger and bigger. And so what he does is he invites the analysts from around, all the different sites. Bobby and I are in it, Brandon's in it. So, and then he invites fans in there. People get in through various different ways. But all he asks you to do is that you make a small contribution to Fantasy Cares. And what happens with all this money that's donated is he goes out every single year in every city. They have people that go out in every city and buy gifts for kids at Christmas time who are a little less fortunate.
Awesome.
So, I can't imagine. There's 720 people in this league. This is a league that I would not dare commission. It's got all these different conferences and divisions, and it's a headache, but Scott does it every single year. So I kudos to Scott.
Nicest guy in the whole industry. And that's saying something because there's a lot of nice people in this industry.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. On over to the listener mailbag, and there are literally hundreds, so we're obviously not going to do them all, but I picked out 3 that I thought would make for some interesting conversations here. If you want to send in questions, you can email them to mailbag@fantasypros.com, tweet us at BobbyFantasyPro or at Mike Tagliere NFL, and we have a new way of doing it. Do you want to tell them about it, Tegs?
We have a phone line you guys can call into and leave a question on there. All we want to know is who you are, where you're from, and leave it. Don't do a keeper league question because we can't do those because we've got a lot of questions on there.
Every single keepers league is so different.
It is, and it's really hard, and the advice doesn't apply to everybody. So go and leave a general question. We're going to go through some today so you guys can actually understand what it is we're looking for.
Yeah.
The number is 209-881-PROS. That's 209-881-PROS. Give us a call.
Hey, by the way, Brandon, where can they find you on Twitter?
Yeah, you can follow me at Brandon, her FFBs, and her fantasy football. And you can check out videos and all sorts of stuff. And I'm going to be writing this year for CBS Sports and Sportsline. So
cool.
That'll be fun too. So I'm going to be doing writing again along with the videos that I'm doing for Fantasy Alarm. So yay.
Terrific. Yeah, looking forward to reading your stuff. Brandon, you always come on the show and you spice things up and give really good advice. So looking forward to hearing what you have to say here. This question, first one is Matt from Philly. He says, some friends and I are starting a new 12-team half PPR league. All other rules are open to discussion. Are there any quirky rules I should bring up? Brandon, we'll let you go first here.
Well, I would say I prefer auctions.
Yes.
And so I'm going to start with that. And I would say I only like, I'm going to be hot takey here. I only like auctions in person one day. And I think you should have an actual auctioneer and chip in for one. And it could be really fun.
Mm-hmm. That's a cool idea. I've never heard that before.
Oh, I love it. I've done it. It's my favorite way to draft is having a real auctioneer going once, going twice. And you're like, that's so intense.
I'm pretty sure our producer, John, is an auctioneer in his other life. He is so good.
So good. We did it for the baseball draft that I hesitantly participated in. But John was the auctioneer of, seriously, I would pay to have John come out and do my draft.
Yeah, he was absolutely phenomenal. Tags, what would you do to change up the leagues?
So I'm always a fan of making leagues deeper. So, I'm writing an article right now and I was reminiscing about the times when I started playing fantasy football. It's about the more research you did and the more you read and the more magazines you bought and all that stuff. It made you prepared. You had sleepers that nobody else knew about. You were drafting guys where you wanted to get them. Nowadays, it's a little tougher to do that. So how do we increase the talent gap? And the only way we do that is more starting positions. So I recommend 3 running backs, 4 wide receivers, and 2 flex spots. And then on a tight end spot, quarterback, whatever. But
no kicker, by the way.
On top of that, deeper benches. Some people say, well, you got to make people pay for that. No, if I want an upside player on my bench and I want to hold him there, yeah. I mean, the thing is, I can go through a 12-team league with 25 bench spots, and there's still going to be guys out there that I want to grab on my team. So when you have a 16-round draft and you're starting 11 of those players, there's 5 people on your bench. That makes things really tough, and you have to let go of players that you don't necessarily want to. So that's the part I don't like about it.
I agree with you. My favorite thing, though, and this is something I don't think enough people do. Actually, I don't know if I've ever heard any other league doing it. is changing the way that the playoff teams are decided. So I like to play in a 12 or 14 team league. 14 is the best because then you can just play everybody once for the first 13 weeks. Then you have three weeks of playoffs. But the best 4 get in. Obviously the 2 division winners get a buys. And then what you do is you take one team that has the most points that's not in the playoffs. They're the 5 seed. And then on week 13, it doesn't matter who you play, whichever team that's not already in the playoffs has the best points in week 13 gets in. That way no one loses attention. People are trying to make trades for good week 13 matchups, and it just keeps everyone involved. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, and don't do divisions. I don't understand the point in divisions. I'm sorry. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I'm cool with that.
Am I wrong in this? Like, I never understood it at all. It's like if you get stuck in a good division and you're like literally in 3rd place, and if you don't make the playoffs because you just happen to fall in a good division, I just feel like the best team should be in the playoffs. And one other thing I want to mention before we move to the next question is that I believe that the regular season winner, it takes more to win the regular season overall than it does to win the playoffs. Like, there's skill to that too, but, the regular season winner should get something. So what I do in my leagues is that have everyone pay $1 for each transaction throughout the year. Just $1. And then what you do is you split that money. So usually in my leagues, it's about $250, something like that. And then you take 125, give it to the regular season winner, take the other 125, buy drinks and food for everybody, and have a league party for the year.
It's a cool idea. All right, next one, Matt from Bed-Stuy. I guess that's in Brooklyn. I'm really surprised he uses y'all in here if he's living in Brooklyn. But he's doing mock drafts recently, and he found himself developing a strategy he wanted to run by us all. Okay? The concept is basically picking up 2 similar wide receivers with potential upside, and then just figuring out which one is going to be the star, getting rid of the other one. Jamison Crowder, Josh Doxson, one of them might be awesome, the other one might be a dud. Devontae Parker, Kenny Stills, you draft them both, you get one really good wide receiver. What do you think about that?
I'm okay with it, but only if you think it's going to be a productive offense. So in that case, I guess it's kind of the opposite of what they're saying, right? So people are targeting offenses that people don't know who the wide receiver 1 is. I'm fine with that. I also feel like taking a stand on those and having a better idea of who really is going to merge is best. And so, like, for me, I'm willing to wait for Kenny Stills because I still think he will present more value than Devontae Parker, although Parker's ADP has dropped quite a bit, so that's actually probably a pretty decent option there. But yeah, I think this is okay, but I think this works better if you're in a best ball setting, because then one of them will go off. Right? Each week. So you're thinking that one of them is going to be the guy that scores touchdown and one of them is going to be the one that whatever. In terms of me making actual decisions in week 1, you're going to have to make decisions early as to who you're going to drop for waivers, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. And it's always tough to figure out who that guy's going to be. With that said, I mean, I think the Washington offense is going to be awesome with Alex Smith. Well, I don't know about awesome because they had Kirk Cousins last year and they weren't exactly awesome, but I love Jamison Crowder. Josh Doxson, I love him at his ADP. Parker, I love at his ADP. Stills, I love at his ADP. I don't know if either of them's going to be a star. And same with Washington. I mean, they've got Jordan Reed to throw to as well, so.
I think it's Paul Richardson there. I'm getting Paul Richardson everywhere.
Yeah, Paul Richardson as well, so. Tags, what do you think, man?
Yeah, no, I think that you hit it on the head, Bobby, in that it has to do with current cost, right? Because Crowder and Doxson are pretty cheap. Parker and Stills are really cheap. And, it goes back to, Brandon just mentioned Richardson. He's really cheap as well. But what you want to do with those players is you want to grab their quarterback, right? Because if you think that Richardson's going to be the guy and then there's still Crowder and Doxson there, they're going to get performance. You want to draft Alex Smith because he's going to be better than people think. I think he's one of the more underrated quarterbacks, especially in 2 quarterback leagues. I think Alex Smith, you'll be extremely happy if you have him as your number 2 quarterback in a 2 quarterback format.
I've got him top 10, man.
Yeah, no, seriously, my projections came up back a little too high on him. I need to go back and adjust them, but seriously, you'll love him in a 2 quarterback format. As for the Dolphins, Ryan Tannehill coming back, if you look back at what he was doing with Adam Gase, he was playing pretty well with him, but it's really hard to gauge because he's been out of football for basically a year and a couple games, so he could come back not the same player. I like Parker and Stills at their current costs, but would I want to invest 2 of my draft picks in an offense that I consider to be a bottom 10 scoring offense? No, I wouldn't. And so I think Brandon's correct in that assessment, where if you have an offense like the Redskins, I have no issue with it because we think it's going to be a higher scoring offense. They have a bad defense, should be in some shootouts. Their secondary's bad, I should say. The front seven's being rebuilt. But as for Parker and Stills, I'm a little concerned about the overall offense, so I can't necessarily like all of them. So I would pick my poison there. And as for right now, I'm with Parker on that one. So we're going to talk about that as the show goes on today.
Also, I want to say, have you guys seen this reality show with Jay Cutler in it?
Yes.
Oh, it's, you guys, this is my summer. I mean, I know we're supposed to get excited for All or Nothing and, Hard Knocks, but man, it might be just watching Jay Cutler do nothing and be sassy.
If they can cut out all the other parts without Jay, I would be completely happy about that, because that was the first show I've ever watched where I actually had to sit there and watch like what was happening. And I was so annoyed by a lot of the stuff that was taking place. But when Jay came on, it was nothing but laughter. Like, Jay's the star of that show.
When he said,
I have no idea what you guys are talking about.
Oh, it's his wife's show, really, but it's all Jay. It's all Jay, because they were out to dinner and she's like, so have you thought about what you're going to do now? And his quote, I'm not kidding you, is, quote, I'm not really looking to do a lot of work right now. I'm looking to do the exact opposite of that.
That is so Jay Cutler.
Oh, yeah, Bobby, you gotta watch it. Like, Jay is just the star of the show.
No, man, I don't think I'm interested at all. Sorry, guys. I don't really watch much TV, and if I do, I don't want to watch that.
Yeah.
Well, just watch the GIFs.
Well, just watch cut-ups on Twitter.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll watch like Civil War documentaries or something.
Oh, I like those too.
Yeah. All right. Final question here. This one's from John. Don't know where he's from. We'll just make it up. We'll say that John is from Alaska. So our first question from Alaska on the Listener Mailbag this year. My question is about managing your bench throughout the season. Can you discuss ways to know like when it's time to send a bench player to waivers? What's your overall approach on keeping someone on the bench throughout the season versus waiving them?
Snaps counts. Here's my thing. I don't think you can ever make a bad pick in the double-digit rounds. It's all about upside. It's all about taking chances, and you put them, on waivers, okay? So that's one of the things that I get really testy about when someone's like, oh, what a bad pick in the 12th round. I'm like, please. But what you do look at, in my opinion, in weeks 1 and 2 and 3 is how often is this player on the field? If this guy isn't even getting on the field, it's time to cash in your chips on him and get someone, but that depends on what their upside is, right? Because if they're on the field all the time, you can literally compare their snap counts and decide right there what you want to do. The only way that I don't feel that way is A, if a player is still hurt and you think they're going to have a big role when they come back, or B, if it is a very specific handcuff in a great offense. So if you say, I want to hold on to Jalen Samuels because I have Le'Veon Bell, that makes sense in my brain, even though Samuels hasn't seen the field. If you are holding on to, let's say, Tariq Cohen, and it doesn't work out for him, and he's not used the way that people think that he is, and here you are, and you got this great running back who has an opportunity because of an injury, you have to go with the guy who's going to be on the field more. So you have to be honest with yourself. Don't hold on to those like guys with a tremendous upside for too long if they're not on the field. That's my opinion.
Remember when Odell Beckham, though, he was hurt for the first 6 weeks.
Exactly.
Everybody dropped him. He was like 5% owned. What if Michael Gallup gets like, twists his ankle or something and he's out for 2 weeks, he doesn't see much snap count? Do you automatically get rid of that guy? Or like Geronimo Allison, you know that he's gonna be the number 2, but he gets nicked up just a little bit. Do you hang on to those guys, Tags?
John, in his email to us, he mentioned that he would be grabbing someone like Kalen Ballage with his last pick, and I think that's a bad idea. So Kalen Ballage is third on the depth chart. He's going to require 2 injuries to see significant playing time. He's the type.
So did Alvin Kamara last year, man.
Hold on a second. But he's the type of guy that, we saw Kamara's snap counts rising. That was clear as day. We talked about him on the show. But what I'm saying with Ballage, I'd be shocked if he plays more than 15 snaps over the first, more than 15 snaps in a game over the first 6 weeks. Like, I just would be shocked if that happens. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't take someone like him. I would take someone that I know, basically I'm going to know what I'm getting, like a Vance McDonald. Vance McDonald is the ideal last round pick for me because you're going to see in the snap counts if he's past Jesse James, because those two combined for, I think it was 87 targets last year. And if he has that starting tight end role locked up because he's had an entire offseason, Vance McDonald, you're going to know exactly what you have after week 1. Whereas like someone like Ballage, you won't. That's the guy that you're going to drop because you're going to need to find out. Week 1 of the waiver wire is so important because that's when Brandon was mentioning you're going to see the snap counts. You're going to know who is exactly where on the depth chart. And that's when you need to attack the waiver wire. And you can't hold on to players like Kalen Ballage who might turn into something. Like if you're in week 5 or week 6 and your roster's got a few guys that you're kind of like meh about, like let's say that you don't really love having Allen Hurns in your roster because he's consistently putting up 6 points and he's not helping you. Grab someone like Kalen Ballage in week 5 or 6 because that's just like holding him, like, Brandon said, like a handcuff. That's when I start grabbing guys like that. But at the beginning of the season, you want to look for those guys that are going to make a difference because they're actually on the field.
I disagree. I love to have the high upside guys the entire time unless you've got a really short bench. And so I don't mind drafting Kalen Ballage is not anywhere close to my favorite. I don't mind drafting a Justin Jackson, who's the backup running back. A lot of people think Austin Eckler. I think it's going to be Justin Jackson.
I agree with you.
If Melvin Gordon goes down, Justin Jackson could be an RB1. I really believe that. And so I'm fine having him on my bench, even if he's not getting any touches. Obviously, if you've got buys coming up, you've got injuries, yeah, he's the guy that you cut. But if you can afford to do it, him and John Kelly, somebody like that, you could hit an absolute home run. We'd be talking about this year's Kamara, this year's Spencer Ware, and I understand by the time most of you drafted last year, we already knew about Kareem Hunt. But before then, we were telling everyone, draft Spencer Ware, and then he got hurt and you won championships. So these are the types of guys you want filling out your bench. I think there are bad picks after the 12th round. I think if you're the guy who picks Greg Zuerlein in the 13th round, you were going to lose. I think if you're the guy who is a Homer Ravens fan and you're reaching for their defense in the 12th round, or you're getting your second quarterback then, or you're getting, just some guy who's, what he's going to be, a Nelson Aguilar. He doesn't have much upside. He's just a depth piece. I want all upside after the 12th
But that's the thing.
round.
So let's pretend something happens. Let's pretend week 1 happens and John Ross goes off for 90 yards and a touchdown, and you saw him getting targets. You saw him being a major part of the offense. Another guy, Rashard Matthews, is that guy on the Titans. And these guys are on the waiver wire. The first person you're going to drop is Justin Jackson.
I'm dropping my depth guy, man. I'm not dropping Justin Jackson. You can always get depth guys on the waiver wire. You can't always get a Justin Jackson, because if Gordon gets hurt, Justin Jackson's $100 fab. You can get your depth guy for $1. He's just like everybody else.
But he also might turn out to be exactly nothing if Melvin Gordon never gets hurt.
Sure. But that's a risk I'm willing to take. It's just one roster spot. And it's not like there's any value above replacement for those depth guys.
Well, but I think what we're talking about here is basically the same thing, but just saying it differently. We all agree that upside is where you want to aim in the double-digit rounds. So don't draft Frank Gore because he's number 2, okay? And I love Frank Gore, and the guy is classic Hall of Famer. I love him. But, let's be honest, we would rather have Kalen Ballage than Frank Gore, because that's how we all on this show play fantasy football. In terms of when I pick up someone on waivers, it depends on how the people that actually are not the low guys, the higher guys, how they're performing. Because if I have 2 guys that I took as my running back 1 and 2, and they're not doing anything, and I'm starting to get a little bit nervous because now all of a sudden they're in a committee or something weird is going on with this offense, or
like Joe Mixon last year, yeah.
Yeah. And then I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? I may then have to drop one of these guys to pick someone up. So it's really about how the whole team is composed and how I need to use that person, and then how big my bench is. But, I think the thing is, again, it comes down to usage and snap counts, and you know what you're holding on to. And I agree. You hold on to Odell Beckham as long as you can because of the injury, because it wasn't his fault. But if I got a healthy dude there, if I've got Joe Mixon sitting there not getting any playing time, and I got Jeremy Hill in there, I'm thinking, what's going on here? I may need to get someone fast, or I'm going to lose this league big time. So you got to think about, it's all about context, and each of these players are different. I'm fine with you drafting Kalen Ballage, but yeah, you may have to let him go if your other guys aren't performing.
Hey, by the way, John, I think Kalen Ballage is very similar to Corey Clement last year. I think he'll be in a similar type of role, so that's a guy I would avoid. Sure, I think there's upside eventually in his career, but he's not going to be used that way right away. I don't think so, at least. All right, on over to the heart of the show, where we're going to tell you about the players we're willing to reach for. But first, I want to tell you about yourrules.com. And seeing that you're listening to this show in early July, I'm betting you're probably pretty amped up about your draft. But before you start forking over your cash to that same website this year, I need to tell you about the hottest new fantasy sports platform, yourrules.com. I just moved a friends and family league over to yourrules.com to take advantage of some of the key features that other sites just aren't offering. Yourrules.com offers total league customization unlike any other fantasy site. And of all the sites out there, this is the first to offer a fantasy experience that is so much closer to how a real football game is managed. No more set it and forget it games. Finally, there's a fantasy football platform with the ability to actually manage the outcome of your weekly matchup. To learn more about in-game substitutions, points for pass interference, the unique ability to handle injuries, head over to yourrules.com and register for the 2018 NFL season. Change your game today at www.yourrules.com. That's YOURULZ.com. All right, so let's do it. And Brandon, we're going to let you start here. I don't know about you guys. I'm going in reverse order just to build it all up. So Brandon, who is your number 5 guy that you're willing to reach for?
Okay, well, I actually am going to talk about this strategy that I've employed recently. If I'm in the middle of drafts right now, I'm finding that it's actually best value for me to go wide receiver, which I'm not incredibly comfortable with. But I've had instances where I've started with Hopkins and Michael Thomas. People are so running back crazed right now that I can't let those guys go away if I'm right there and just sitting there going, okay, it's this or Melvin Gordon. You know, I mean, these are the decisions that I'm making. So what I'm doing then is I'm reaching in the third and the fourth for these rookie running backs that in my opinion are definitely the number one guys. So that would be the Rashad Pennies of the world, Ronald Jones, the guys. Listen, Saquon Barkley's amazing, obviously, and he's going to go as one of the first 6 picks. But these other guys are incredibly good, and they do not have competition. Rashad Penny had the number 1 elusive rating according to Pro Football Focus among all of the running backs coming out of the draft this year. Now, he'll need it because of that offensive line, but he's an incredibly good athlete who's built to play in Seattle. Ronald Jones, I'm sorry, but if this offense is going to give Jaquiz Rodgers 20-plus touches a game, what do you think they're going to give Ronald Jones? I mean, come on. So to me, I'm going a little bit higher on them in the third and fourth. So then I have 2 solid wide receivers, 2 solid running backs, and then usually I get like an Emmanuel Sanders type for my third wide receiver. And I'm like, whoa, this starting lineup is killer.
I like it. So of those rookie running backs, who's your favorite? Is it Geis? Is it Penny?
I think it's actually Ronald Jones because I can get him the latest. And I think that his usage is going to be crazy, especially with the Jameis Winston suspension. I don't know how they don't lean on him. That would be insane.
So right now, Ronald Jones is ADP 59. That's RB 26, guys. I agree. I think he's going to be a workhorse. And I mean, what are they going to do? Peyton Barber? No.
Yeah, that's, by the way, that's a lot of noise. You know, come on, that's just crazy. And that's why you also have to listen to these preseason news blurbs with a grain of salt, because they're also looking for news. Did you see the poor guy who wrote that article about?
Oh, Baker Mayfield.
Baker Mayfield got engaged. What should we do?
I don't even want to give it any attention. Like, that was the stupidest article I've ever seen. I'm sorry. I try and respect work. That was stupid.
Yeah.
I'm glad I missed it.
Yeah. So listen, in my opinion, these guys are studs. They came out for a reason. I like a lot of them, and I am reaching for them if I go wide receiver heavy at the top.
What do you think about Royce Freeman? Would you reach for him as well?
Yeah. I would. Okay. I think that Denver's going to do really well depending on him. I think they made a mistake with CJ Anderson last year, and still CJ put up over 1,000 rushing yards. So the quietest 1,000 rushing yard season maybe in history, but it did happen. So yeah, and I think people are really underestimating the Broncos' offensive weapons, period. Case Keenum is such an improvement over Trevor Siemian. I mean, I don't know. People clearly weren't watching tape. You guys, this is a huge improvement. You don't need to be a Case Keenum fanboy to be like, yeah, wow, what an improvement. So, yeah, I would reach for him too.
Yeah, I think his legs also, a lot of people don't realize how fast Case Keenum is. I think his legs will open it up for Royce Freeman to be a solid rookie running back as well. Tags, what do you think about these guys?
Well, you guys are just taking people off my list, so I'm not really happy with you two right now. So,
Sorry.
So my number 5 one was actually Royce Freeman. You know, he was someone that reminded me while watching his tape of Jordan Howard. I don't think he does anything like elite level. Like, I don't think he's an elite level elusive or anything like that. He's not a great pass catcher.
He's going to be awesome on the goal line. I disagree. I think he's an elite level goal line back.
No. He's got phenomenal. So the thing he does phenomenal that most people don't notice is he has vision. And the vision thing you can't teach. Like, that's just something you have or you don't. He's not a really fast guy, but he will follow his blocks and he knows how to find the holes. So I like Royce Freeman a lot. His current ADP in half PPR leagues is 105. I'm willing to take him as like around the 25 running back range, which is right around pick 60 or 70. So I'm willing to reach 3 rounds if I have to for Royce Freeman. I do not. This is a player who we're going to see move up the draft board. Like, he's not going to stay there. The Broncos have talked about, they drafted a running back that they haven't had in quite some time, and someone who can shoulder the load. That's the way they described it, not me. And for the people out there who are Devontae Booker supporters, like, stop. Okay. Devontae Booker had his chance. Okay. If you go back to 2016, he had his chance and he blew it. And then in 2017, they went to CJ Anderson. They obviously had a little bit of a timeshare, but it was CJ Anderson's gig. He went over 1,000 yards, as Brandon mentioned. Now, Devontae Booker, they cut CJ Anderson. They cut the guy that they were playing over Devontae Booker. Then they drafted a guy at the top of the 3rd round. Does this equation equal Devontae Booker is good and he's our starting running back? No, it means you cut the guy that was in front of him, which means you think very little of him, but you own him for very little money. It wouldn't be shocking if he was cut. I think D'Angelo Henderson is just as good as he is, but it's clear that Royce Freeman was drafted to take on that workhorse role. And if their offensive line, it was supposed to be better last year. Ron Leary came there in free agency. Garrett Bowles, they drafted him in the 1st round. if these guys, if they mesh well in their second season together, I think they'll take a step forward. And I love Royce Freeman as a low end RB2. If you wait at the position, I think he's a great low end RB2.
He's being drafted right now behind Marlon Mack, Tevin Coleman, Carlos Hyde. People, no.
Yeah, like I said, that'll change. That is going to change once preseason comes around. Yeah.
All right. Here's my number 5 guy. And, who was it that we had on the show? It was, Jason Moore was so mad at me for saying that I love Brandon Cooks this year. But I love Brandon Cooks this year. He's the wide receiver 21 in ECR, and he's been a top 10 wide receiver each of the past 2 seasons.
Oh, Bobby. No, don't do it again.
You're not going to draft again. He was a top 10 wide receiver. You're not drafting him as a top 20 wide receiver?
Sammy Watkins was like a top 12 receiver when healthy with Tyrod Taylor, but then he went to the Rams and you saw what happened.
Brandon Cooks is always healthy. What are you projecting an injury?
No,
for
I'm
him?
projecting the Rams offense, and there's just too many guys for him to be a top 12 receiver. Like, I feel like, I'm not saying you're not going to have weeks where you're like, yes, I'm so happy I own Brandon Cooks. I think it's going to be Sammy Watkins-esque, where it's like, there's going to be weeks where you're just like, why aren't they targeting this guy? Why'd they pay him so much money? Why'd they trade, all these things.
Yeah, but Watkins was the number 4 in that offense. Cooks is going to come in and be the number 1 or number 2 in that offense. He has had a whole off season to go in there.
Robert Woods was extremely efficient last year. Cooper Kupp filled his role. They're not going to touch Cooper Kupp's role. They drafted him for a role. He's playing that role. Todd Gurley is one of the best receiving backs out of the backfield. Why are you going to take touches away from guys who are extremely efficient? And on top of that,
because they're not as good as Brandon Cooks, man. Sammy Watkins couldn't learn the playbook. He thinks the earth is flat. Brandon Cooks is going to come in there, learn the playbook, play all over the place, and he's going to be awesome. He's going to be a lot better than wide receiver 21. I've got him as a top 14 wide receiver.
And on top of that, Gerald Everett was drafted last year. He was a rookie tight end, and they didn't target tight ends at all last year. So like I said, I think that McVay's he's going to work this offense into something else. He's going to morph it so it's not predictable because he's a young offensive mind. But Brandon, are you with me on this, or are you closer to Bobby's side? Like
before you answer, remember he's got the same first name as you, spelled different but same first name.
Very true. Very true. Actually, probably if we both put credit cards out going Dutch on a date, I'd probably get his because they think it'd be a girl spelling, right? And always the funky spelling is what they think. Yeah, I'm more with Mike here, but I'm going to say this: if I'm playing in a best ball format, I love guys like Brandon Cooks. If I have to decide weekly about whether or not I play him, I do not like Brandon Cooks because you're right. It's going to be Sammy Watkins-esque. And I'm a huge Gerald Everett supporter. They love him. They want him to be the next Jordan Reed. And remember, Jordan Reed at the time, was productive. Yeah. So, and McVay, that was his first pick that he made, as the new head coach, and it was very much his pick. So I kind of feel the same way. I'm just not quite sure. I think this offense, there's now tape on it. We can study a little bit more of the variety and the patterns and what have you. And there are a lot of smart people in other teams too that are going to figure it out a little bit. I'm not saying it's going to take a huge step backwards, but I don't think there's going to be enough to support a week to week Brandon Cooks, just because also I think Jared Goff really likes Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp as targets. Genuinely.
So, Bobby, this is one of those, like what we were talking about at the top of the show. Brandon Cooks is one of those guys. He's going to finish better than wide receiver 21. I actually agree with you on that. But my ranking of him will not be better than what his finish will be because he's just going to be very volatile.
Yeah, there's going to be some volatility there, but if he finishes that high, that means there's going to be some weeks where he absolutely wins the week for you. I mean, if we're talking about like wins over replacement, and that's not something that's been exactly derived, but we can get an idea of what it looks like. Like if you finish with 17 points as a wide receiver, you're giving your team like a 15-20% better chance of winning than a replacement level player. Whereas if you're getting, if he goes out and posts one of those 3s or 4s that sometimes will happen, yeah, he reduces your chances of winning by, 15 or 20%. But there's going to be so many more of those that's 15 to 20 points that
I don't know, man.
He's essentially going to help you win more games than the guy. I wasn't going to say this, Brandon, but since you disagreed with me, than an Adam Thielen.
Well, I think that the problem that I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around is this guy is so young and this is his third team. Like, what is happening here? And that's a lot for anyone to learn, too. I actually wouldn't judge him if it was, like confusing a little bit. Or maybe it's old hat now. I don't know.
Or maybe they just all love him so much that like we have to go get this guy if he's available.
Oh, okay. But I don't even know. I'm not trying to make like a judgment call on him necessarily like as a human, but it does beg the question of why, because that is very odd because his skill set is so high. I just don't understand. Now, New Orleans got Michael Thomas, and they obviously knew that they had a baller, and they were like, listen, we can get a lot of value here. And by the way, they made the most of it. Yeah, the Saints, that one made sense. The Patriots, I'm very surprised that they were like, see ya. That's weird.
Yeah, I don't know what was going on with that. Actually, I do know what was going on with that. They needed to go out and get get Sony Michel.
Stop talking about names. I want to hear Brandon's number 4.
You know, when it comes to people that I am willing to grab a little bit earlier, I'm going to say if I'm not getting the top 3 tight ends, then I'm waiting until the end of my draft. And that's it. So I'm willing to take a Travis Kelce or a Zach Ertz, a little bit higher in the 4th or 5th, but I'm dropping it down. So that's it. So I guess it's not really like reaching, but I am willing to do, because I know there's a big debate about tight ends right now. I'm willing to do the Gronk, Kelce, Ertz thing, but then I am out.
I like it. Yeah, I totally understand that. And of those, I would reach for Ertz more than any of them. Tags, how do you feel about those top 3 tight ends? Would you reach for them?
I think it's a great point, and it's funny because her number 4 ties in with my number 4. My number 4 is Trey Burton / Jordan Reed, and the reason I have it like that is because I'm not willing to reach on the top tier guys. Like, I understand the reason why you'd want to draft Gronk, and I'd consider him at the start of the 3rd, but it's just really tough. Kelce, I feel like his ceiling is going to be a little bit limited with the addition of Watkins to the offense. Like, I still think Kelce's going to be great, but it's again, there's only so much to go around. You have basically a rookie quarterback. Ertz, I like. He seems like he's a little more nicked up than I would like to spend on a top 3 pick, and a guy that plays a receiver position that they usually don't miss much time, but he seems to be in and out of the lineup a little bit too much for me. So I put down Trey Burton and Jordan Reed because I don't want, that's my cutoff point. That's my point where it's like, oh crap, if I missed a tight end by those 2 guys, I'm really upset because that means I have to grab multiple tight ends, Benjamin Watson or, Vance McDonald. I love Vance McDonald. He's the guy I would grab in the last round because I believe he is actually going to be a breakout this year. I think that he's going to be a tight end 1, when the season's done. I think he's going to be a top 12 guy. You're going to find that out in week 1. We talked about that with your last pick. You want a guy that you're going to find out right away. I think we're going to find out about McDonald. He plays the Browns in week 1, so I would probably stream him, but I also might grab somebody else. But ideally, I have a guy who I don't have to worry about streaming that I can play every single week. And Trey Burton is the guy I want on my teams. He goes to Matt Nagy's offense. He knows 90% of the playbook. He's essentially teaching he's helping awesome. Nagy teach the entire team the offense because he knows all of it. So he's working with Trubisky to help to understand the playbook. Obviously, when you do that with a player, you're going to develop some chemistry that he wants to target somebody over the middle of the field. Allen Robinson is still dealing with the ACL thing. He hasn't gotten into practice, so he might be a little slow to start the season, which means Trey Burton and Anthony Miller might be the stars of this offense, once we start in week 1, week 2.
That's really interesting. I don't think it's going to be Anthony Miller, but we'll save that one for another time. We were all on the same wavelength here because I'm going tight end as well, and for the same types of reasons. My guy is Kyle Rudolph. Once those top 7 tight ends are gone, if I don't have one, you better believe I'm drafting Kyle Rudolph. I don't care when it is in the draft. I am not letting it get deeper than that. I guess I'd be okay with Jordan Reed. He's really risky, of course. There's big upside there. And I love Eric Ebron. I've actually seen that they're spreading him out all over the offense. Would it surprise you guys if they actually used him as like their wide receiver 2?
I think the more we hear about it, the more it seems like he's going to be used as the Zach Ertz of their offense. But I mean, I don't know, man. We talked about it before.
Because I think Doyle's fine too, but Ebron really excites me. I just think he's got big time upside. Now he could be a total dud like Coby Fleener a couple years ago. But he's not going where Coby Fleener was drafted. Coby Fleener was the tight end 5. And Tags, that was actually our first conversation ever, was me and you just being so buddy about how much we loved Coby Fleener. That sucks.
Yeah, going to Drew Brees' offense. Yeah, that was a mistake.
Yes.
We overestimated how good the Sean Payton offense can be for someone who's not very good at football.
So I've got Kyle Rudolph as my number 5 tight end. I've got Delaney Walker 6, Trey Burton 7. After that, it is just so ugly. I don't want Jimmy Graham. I don't want Evan Ingram.
Yeah, the Jimmy Graham. How do you feel about Jimmy Graham, Brandon? It's kind of like a hit or miss thing. The tight end position is so ugly to me, but I think Jimmy Graham, I think we've started to see signs of his demise. He's going to a new offense. Aaron Rodgers is a very precision passer. He's developed chemistry with these players, and I think it's why you see players struggle so much when they leave him, or even when they come to the team, the rookies last year. So many people talking about Jamon Moore. They're talking about Equanimeous St. Brown, all these other guys. These guys don't produce with Aaron Rodgers. It's even Devontae Adams remember how bad Devontae Adams was to start his career? It's like these guys take time to learn Aaron Rodgers, and he takes time to learn them and what their strengths are and what he can do. So I'm not completely sold on Jimmy Graham because Aaron Rodgers is not the type to throw a jump ball in the end zone. He just doesn't do that.
I have very strong opinions about Jimmy Graham. First of all, he had a tough time getting used to Seattle. His first year in Seattle was tough. It's tough to learn offense. And this isn't a knock on any players. It's tough. Absolutely. So I think we as fantasy players put too much of an expectation on a lot of these guys that are changing teams, first of all. Second of all, the number one wide receiver in touchdowns over the last 2 seasons is Devontae Adams. They have the best red zone target in football right now at the wide receiver position. That's a fact. He's number one.
I think Beckham, but yeah.
But he's number one in total touchdowns. So the fact that they would then all of a sudden say, no, we're going to give 10 touchdowns to Jimmy Graham makes no offensive sense. So,
yes,
and if
exactly.
Jimmy Graham's not getting touchdowns, he's not scoring fantasy points as we've seen over the last few seasons. And I don't know if he's really like diminished in skill as much as he was just on a team that it was the weirdest trade of all time. They did not need him. He was completely unnecessary to that offense. It was bizarre. So, yeah, I guess in my opinion, I think he's going way too high. I am not into him whatsoever. If this show was about people I'm not drafting, Jimmy Graham would probably be my number one pick. I am not doing it this year.
He's in my top 5 too. Deshaun Watson's my obvious number 1, but yeah, Jimmy Graham's top 5 for sure.
I agree with you on Watson as well.
Cool. Yeah, I think every expert we've had come on the show, Tags, has agreed with us that Watson is nowhere near the quarterback number 2.
Yeah, no, I don't understand the love. I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't know which experts are ranking him high enough that he's still like ECR number 3, I think it is. I think Russell Wilson snuck above him, but he was number 2 for a long time.
Don't forget about Martellus Bennett last year, guys. Like, I actually was sucked into that one where I was against Martellus Bennett, and then the more I was like, okay, I get it. You know, they did spend some money in free agents to acquire him, even though Aaron Rodgers traditionally doesn't target tight ends extremely, like a whole lot. And then Martellus Bennett was probably in better shape than Jimmy Graham has been as of late, and Martellus Bennett couldn't get anything going with Aaron Rodgers. So I just, like I said, Jimmy Graham is coming from playing with Drew Brees and Russell friggin' Wilson. Like, these are 2 elite quarterbacks, and he didn't top more than 72 yards in a game last year. Jimmy Graham, he wasn't good with Russell Wilson. So, I mean, I understand the want to like him. I really do, because, you know, this nostalgia of him being up there with with Rob Gronkowski for a long time. But he's 32 years old. He had that devastating knee injury that, by the way, coming back from that was like a revelation itself. Like, it was just very uncommon for someone to come back. But over the last year and a half, he's shown signs of a decline. So.
And I just want to tag on one quick fun fact about Deshaun Watson. In terms of accuracy percentage, according to Pro Football Focus, there were only 2 quarterbacks that played in at least 25% of their snaps with a worse accuracy percentage than Deshaun Watson. It was Deshaun Kaiser and Drew Stanton. Deshaun Watson was 38th in the National Football League.
That is a great stat. I'm so glad you shared that. Can I steal that?
You can, absolutely. But this is why I wasn't into Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota making a big leap in their fantasy points last season. I faded both of them repeatedly because they also had bad accuracy percentages. It improved a little bit last year, but not much. So accuracy matters in terms of what you're going to find in terms of fantasy productivity. In my opinion, I think it's actually one of the most important stats, which is also why I like Baker Mayfield.
Who doesn't like Baker Mayfield? He's the man.
The devil.
Yeah, that guy who wrote that article.
All right, Brandon, who's your number 3?
Well, I think we might be in agreement on this one because you guys kind of snuck his name in there. I'm drafting Michael Gallup too high, and I'm fine with it because it's still in the 12th round.
Gallup.
He's seriously going in the 12th round?
Yeah, I got him in the 12th round just the other day in a best ball league. I think people aren't really paying attention. But you guys, Michael Gallup is by far and away the wide receiver out of this rookie class who has the clearest path to a possibility of being the number 1 target on their team. Everyone else has a really big stud in front of them. Like, I love Calvin Ridley, don't get me wrong, but there's Julio Jones there. That's a pretty legit guy. Pretty good. And yeah, I like Andrew Miller. I think that he is a second most because is Allen Robinson going to be healthy or what's going to happen here? But Allen Robinson also not a schlub, right? So all these rookie wideouts, it's really dicey.
He's good too.
You guys, yeah, he's incredibly good. He did not come from a stud school, so I think that people get a little bit worried about that. And again, you guys, they're not in college anymore. Let it go. Get your head around the Antonio Browns of the world. So I would say this. Allen Hurns was never a wide receiver one. Okay? Ever. Now, he had a great season as a wide receiver 2 opposite an amazing wide receiver 1. Now, even if Michael Gallup's number 1 target, he's not going to be an amazing wide receiver 1 that's going to open that up for Allen Hurns. And then the worst case is, over the last 2 seasons, he hasn't played in more than 11 games, hasn't gone over 500 yards, and hasn't scored more than 3 touchdowns in an entire season. How is he all of a sudden going to put up wide receiver 1 numbers in the National Football League? It blows my mind.
And he couldn't do it with Blake Bortles. And it was all garbage time, too. I'm not buying Allen Hurns at all.
Weird. It's weird people love him.
People are drafting Kenny Golladay ahead of Michael Gallup right now. Galladay's the clear-cut wide receiver 3.
Yeah, Golladay, that's a dumb pick. I'm sorry. I don't want to get on people that like Golladay, but I think it's a dumb pick. Anyways, but yeah, I don't know why Michael Gallup's going so late. That it really doesn't make any sense. And he was on my list that didn't quite make it into my top 5, but he was definitely considered for it because, you mentioned he's the only one, you said he's got the clearest path to number 1 targets. I think he's the only one on this team who's a potential number 1 receiver. In my rookie profile that I did for him, I compared him to Jeremy Maclin. I think he's best suited as a number 2, but Perfect. He could step up as a number 1 if need be at times. I think that it's there. He's a guy that can play all over the field too. So, I mean, my worry is that the competence of the coaching staff in Dallas doesn't get him on the field because they've talked about, Cole Beasley, he's someone that they couldn't start Ryan Switzer over. In fact, they traded away Ryan Switzer. Allen Hurns, we paid him. He's a starting receiver.
Terrence Williams plays 80% of the snaps.
You know why we want to play Terrence Williams? Because he's a good blocker. Yeah, I'm not kidding, guys. That's why they play Terrence.
So put him on the offensive line.
Yeah, he's that good. They were playing him over Bryce Butler. I just don't have faith in the coaching staff to play Gallup right away, but I love Gallup as a player, and I think that he can make a difference. Dak Prescott is not nearly as bad as people are making him out to be. He's actually an above average NFL quarterback. So I dig the Michael Gallup one. He's someone I would not mind having on my bench.
Well, and I'll say this, I did the, coverage for Sirius XM's, draft at the FSTA. So they kind of considered that, the kickoff was fun. We were in Minneapolis. We got to go into the stadium, which is a really cool stadium, you guys. So I was on the coverage team and I was the only person that had even thought about Michael Gallup. And we got into almost a fight about it. And I was like, you guys, he is by far the number, out of all the rookie wide receivers, he's the only one that I'm interested in. And you can get him still so low. And everyone's like, I don't know. I mean, Allen Hurns and, all this. And I just kind of tore it to shreds. I did exactly what I did here. And everyone was shocked. I was like, wow, what a hot take, but you should really hold on to that. You should really own this Michael Gallup take. And I was like, is this a take? I just thought it was facts.
Yeah, no, that's not a hot take by any means. I'm actually with you.
No. Yeah. I think that most, people that we have on our show agree, and we try to only get like the best people in the industry. So I don't think you're alone on that one, Brandon.
Oh, well, good. Thank you, guys.
All right. Who's your number 3 here, Tags?
I had Ronald Jones there, man. As I mentioned, Peyton Barber for the supporters on Peyton Barber, he sat behind Doug Martin and Charles Sims while they averaged, sub 3.3 yards per carry the last year. Again, you don't draft a running back at the top of the second round if you're happy with what you have. Ronald Jones isn't a depth chart guy. And if you're worried about his size, he scored 18 touchdowns last year. I think his size was fine. He came in at over 200 pounds. I mean, losing Jameis in the offense, does it lose some of the potency of the offense? Yeah, for sure. But the thing with Ronald Jones you don't have to worry about is loaded boxes. Like, you don't have to worry about that at all. They have so many weapons on that team that legitimately he's going to see 6-man fronts quite a bit.
Yep, I agree with that. I already talked about how much I like Ronald Jones. I like Sony Michel more than all of them. He's not on my list. And, this next one, I feel a little bit embarrassed about it. In fact, I have something to admit. I thought about not even telling you guys that I was drafting this player that high because it's just embarrassing. But you know what? I'm drafting him. I need to let you guys know I'm reaching. I bought in again for Sammy Watkins. I know he thinks the earth is flat. I know he screwed me over last season. I have to do the combine as a result of that. I know all these things, okay, but I also know the talent, and he's going as wide receiver 29 right now. He was a top 30 wide receiver last year in the worst possible situation. I think he goes to a better situation where he is the number 1 wide receiver. It's not Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill's not a number 1. Watkins is going to get a lot more targets here. I know they got Travis Kelce as well, but I think Watkins could be a dynamo.
Bobby, you're going to love my Sammy Watkins profile that's going to be coming out. I think this week, actually. I think I'm going to put it out just because I want to get it out there.
I'm not going to read it. Any time that I see Sammy Watkins' name, I just feel sad. I'll draft him, but I don't even want to talk about him.
No, you're going to like him. You're going to like what you read, and the fact that the way that they're talking about using him, they're talking about using him more in the slot. Andy Reid said in ways that he hasn't been used in his career, which I don't know if that's really true, because if you go to the Rams last year, he played in the slot 31% of the time last year. So they're moving him around. Slot targets are worth more, yada yada, but you'll read the profile when it comes out. So I have no issue with Watkins. Actually, if there's one person on the Chiefs offense I am buying, it's Sammy Watkins, because someone is going to disappoint, because they are not going to have 2 top 30 receivers, a top 2 tight end, and a top 10 running back. It's not going to happen, guys. So you have to understand, you have to pick someone who you think is going to bust. And I think Tyreek Hill is definitely a bust, but looking at their costs, the other ones are being drafted exactly where they're projected to go, whereas Sammy Watkins is being drafted arguably kind of at his floor. He might be a little up and down. He might be a little Brandon Cooksy, but you're getting him for a lot cheaper.
This time last year, Watkins was going in the top 30 overall. Right now, he's wide receiver 29. I mean, this is a guy who was drafted second overall. He's an absolute freak of nature.
Bobby, this might be like, when we have our bold prediction episode, that's going to be coming up, in the coming months. I think one of my bold predictions will be that Sammy Watkins outscores Tyreek Hill.
Oh, that's not bold, man.
Is it? When you look at ADP of 29 and 9.
Oh, I guess most people will think it is, but yeah, for us, yes, Tyreek Hill, wide receiver 10 right now. What? Oh, I've got Watkins higher than him, man. I've got them 23 and 24.
It's a hot take, man. I know it is, but it's like kind of like last year when I said that Devin Funchess could outscore Kelvin Benjamin. That's kind of how I feel about it, where it's like, I'm not going to say it's like likely to happen.
Did you know that Kelvin Benjamin was going to the Bills?
Yeah, he got traded. I don't know about that.
Kelvin Benjamin was bad before that.
I was,
he was
so
horrible.
Right on him getting traded. I was like, what?
All right, Brandon, number 2 here.
Jamal Williams.
Okay.
I think he is the lowest ADP number 1 running back on the board every draft. And I take him all the time. All the time.
Is he going to be the number 1 running back when Aaron Jones comes back?
Yeah, I think so. I think he is the best pound for pound actual running back. I think Aaron Jones, I know there's a lot of truthers out there. We got a lot of, but he's so athletic, which,
That's me, I'm sorry.
It's my least favorite thing that people say, because I'm like, oh, really? Oh, because he plays in the NFL. I get it. Yes, athletic. Yeah, no. So to me, I think Jamal Williams is the guy that I think they're going to go back to a little bit more of a traditional running game as a way to protect Aaron Rodgers. I think that there's going to be a little bit more, hey, is Eddie Lacy, the prototype we want to go with here? No. But, he did keep defenses honest. It was really bad what was going on there when they were trying to make Ty Montgomery an every down back and all this other ridiculousness. I think they've realized that they're over this. So Jamal Williams is, in my opinion, the number 1, especially goal line carries. And by the way, they're going to get to the goal line because they have Aaron Rodgers back there. So that is a great offense. And if they just want to punch it in, I think it's Jamal Williams most of the time.
Jones was so much better than Williams when he was on the field, but Tags has said this before, Williams is so much better at run blocking, there's no chance they're going to go start Aaron Jones. Yeah, he's going to cut into his carries when he comes back. Williams is going to get the goal line carries, and he's going to play enough that he's definitely worth starting each and every week. I love the pick. He's ADP 39 right now behind Rex Burkhead, Chris Thompson, Isaiah Crowell, Kerryon Johnson. I would draft Jamal Williams over all those guys.
Behind Isaiah Crowell, that's a crime. Like, seriously, you should be arrested.
Isn't it amazing?
You should be arrested if you take Isaiah Crowell before you take Jamal Williams. And that's the thing is, like, I believe it's going to be somewhat more of a timeshare than people think, but the Aaron Jones suspension means everything. And I say that because we know who's starting week 1. We know that it's Jamal Williams' job, and we know the thing is, so many people in the industry talk about how overrated pass blocking is for running backs because they only stay in the pass block, a certain percentage amount of time. It's very small, but here's what matters. The coach cares. And if the coach, Mike McCarthy, cares about pass blocking for his running backs, Jamal Williams is going to be on the field. Jamal Williams last year, in my 82 interesting stats from last year, that article I released, one of the stats in there was that Jamal Williams had the worst big play rate, is that he wasn't breaking longer than 15-yard runs. Jamal Williams was essentially Frank Gore last year in the Packers offense that was led by Brett Hundley.
Offensive line was hurt. Brett Hundley was the quarterback. Aaron Rodgers is here now.
He did not get a fair shake.
I agree with you 100%. And the thing is, Aaron Jones had a great game, and then he had one great run against the Saints, and then people want to fall in love after that one game. Jamal Williams had a few good games in there. He showed the ability to handle a big workload. Like I said, the Aaron Jones suspension changed everything for me. I had these two so close. I felt my prediction was that Jamal Williams started the season anyways, just because of what how more well-rounded he is. And now I feel more comfortable. And seriously, stop drafting Isaiah Crowell. Like, I wouldn't take Isaiah Crowell my last pick. I'm not kidding.
I agree. I would not draft him in any 12-team league in 16-player rosters or whatever. I wouldn't draft him at all. And you remember, I mean, last year everyone was so excited about Jamal Williams, and for good reason. He's a very good running back. He was a freak in college. He's very athletic as well, right? Aaron Jones is a little bit more, but Jamal Williams is a really good athlete. We were drafting him above this last year when he wasn't the starter.
Yeah, it makes no sense, guys. Like,
you know what's really crazy? He averaged over 10 yards per reception.
Yeah, I know.
Wow.
That's something you wouldn't really think of, but yeah, I mean, listen, he didn't have many, but the point is that, the guy is, he had 25 receptions on the season, but they averaged 10.5 yards per reception. He averaged 10.1 after the catch.
I do think it makes sense, by the way, to get the pass blocking running back out there, because if Aaron Jones is out there, you know that they're probably running the ball, right?
I mean, if Mike McCarthy's in charge, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, if Jamal Williams is out there, they have to worry. Are they going to run the ball or are they going to pass the ball?
Yeah, Ty Montgomery's going to be mixed in there too. So like I said, I think it's going to be a timeshare more than any of us would like, but I do think Jamal Williams starter week 1.
All right, Tags. It's to you for number 2.
All right, well, I'm going to take him before you do, and it's Geronimo Allison.
I wasn't going to say him. I had him number 6. I had him like number 2 or number 3, but I just figured you were going to mention him, so I might.
Oh yeah, for sure. No, Geronimo Allison is on every single one of my best ball teams, I think. Unless we play in a league with our listeners, because he's stolen from me or Bobby takes him. But Geronimo Allison, his ADP right now is 200, which is basically undrafted. It doesn't make sense, guys. Like, I joke about it, but I'm serious when I say that James Jones retired a couple years after he caught 14 touchdowns from Aaron Rodgers. You guys are talking about rookie wide receivers coming in. Hold on, here's a challenge for you guys. Can you guys name the 2 wide receivers that the Packers drafted last year in the 5th and 6th round?
Well, I mean, you already said it earlier on the show, so yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So yeah, Malachi Dupree. Where is he? D'Angelo Yancey. Have you guys heard of his name?
Oh, last year. I thought you meant this year.
No, that's what I'm saying. Not many people. I can do it because it's obviously my job to do it, but not many people can tell me who the Packers wide receivers they drafted last year were. And the reason they can't do that is because they didn't play. But yet, these guys that they drafted this year were drafted in the same exact range. D'Angelo Yancey was in the 5th round last year. That's where Moore was taken this year. Yet people want to give the job to those guys. Did we not just talk about the chemistry with Rodgers, knowing the offense? Allison has played 15 career games with Rodgers, and he has produced phenomenal in those. He actually had an 8-target game last year, or an 8-catch game where he had 133 yards with Rodgers in the lineup. So Rodgers obviously feels comfortable with him. He's shown the ability to produce in the offseason. They didn't go out and get a free agent. They didn't go out and draft a wide receiver with even a day 2 pick. So yeah, Geronimo Allison, come on. That's the guy that you draft and you know exactly what you're getting after week 1.
If you wanted St. Brown or Moore, if the Packers wanted him so badly that they had to get them, at the front of the depth chart ahead of Geronimo Allison, they would have taken him before the 5th round.
Right. He was not a priority to take there. That's the thing. It's just he's also known as a project too. They also know it's going to take some time to develop him. So expecting a rookie to walk in on day 1, no. If you want to talk about next year, okay, maybe they outwork Geronimo Allison, but Allison, at worst, is going to be like a wide receiver 4 in fantasy right now.
All right. My number 2 is, I can't decide who to put number 1 and number 2. Let's go with Jordan Wilkins. Okay. He's running back 69 right now, ADP 253. So he's basically going undrafted. And I understand Marlon Mack's there. Nyheim Hines is probably going to get some work in the passing game, and Mack is electric. But the thing is, Jordan Wilkins has a chance to start week 1. The same way Alfred Morris did in 2012, where nobody was expecting it. He came in and, you know what, just won the job. If he wins the job as the starting running back in Andrew Luck's offense, he's at least an RB2. He's got awesome upside. He's not the greatest athlete. He's not the best running back, but he was pretty good in college. He's a guy who can step right in as a 4th, 5th round pick, whatever he was, step into a starting job and just be fine in Andrew Luck's offense.
You kind of have to wonder on basically where Frank Reich is going to go. Is he going to go the Andy Reid way, or is he going to go the Doug Peterson way? Because so many people have talked about the Doug Peterson, they use the multi-back system. Well, I mean, it really depends, because if you go to Andy Reid uses a 1-back system. And if you look at the snaps last year, look at the touches with Kareem Hunt, they were all there. Jamal Charles got a ton of them. we don't know what Frank Reich is going to do. We don't know if he agrees with the whole timeshare. With the way they built it, though, the Hines pick in the draft, taking Wilkins late in the draft, having Robert Turbin on the roster, having Marlon Mack, it seems like it's going to be somewhat of the Doug Peterson one. So I do think it's going to be a bit of a mess for fantasy. However, another suspension. Robert Turbin got suspended for 4 games. That clears up the path for Jordan Wilkins to get those RB1 snaps, and he's been taking first-team snaps in practice. Yes. Marlon Mack has been out with a shoulder injury. He had shoulder surgery this offseason, which is kind of under the table because these guys are all learning a new offense. So Jordan Wilkins really isn't behind anybody. It's a new head coach, so there's no favoritism going on there. So I like Wilkins. I don't know if I would reach for him, but I think he's a fine guy to put on your bench, though.
Most important question, can he catch Nerf balls?
That's what I was going to say. I know that I'm not popular to say this. I'm incredibly concerned about Andrew Luck still.
Oh man.
What quarterback?
You're bumming me out, Brandon.
What quarterback has taken
to come on
this
here and
much?
be all enthusiastic about everything, and you're just bumming me out.
I know, but what quarterback has come back after this much time of not throwing a football and then had a stud fantasy season? Like, name one.
Peyton Manning. Was he out that long? I think he was.
No, he wasn't. He got hurt at the beginning of the season, and then he came back the next season. But he was out the whole season. But remember, he was like standing on the sidelines of preseason.
Yeah, it was like 1 year.
Didn't his neck fall off at some point?
Yeah, and he still threw a football before Andrew Luck did. That's my point. Yeah. I think this is a little crazy. I think our expectations for Andrew Luck are too high for where he was. Also, this talk about it being mental, that disturbs me because I'm someone who's suffered a shoulder injury, and I do have a mental block on like moving my shoulder in certain ways, and there is that element to an injury. If that's the case, I'm concerned. I think we just have too high of expectations. I'm not saying that I hate him or anything like that, but I'm also wondering if there's two playbooks, because it was really unfair having Jacoby Brissett perform in an Andrew Luck playbook all year. They have to have a backup plan. No, but it was unfair to him. Yeah. I mean, they brought him in, they were like, here you go. And he was like, what the what? And I hope that they have a contingency plan. I'm a little nervous. I'm also nervous about the first time he gets hit, if he doesn't get freaked out again.
For what Jacoby Brissett had to do, he did a great job. He was really awesome. Yeah. I mean, coming in and learning the playbook in 1-2 weeks, and then he gets thrown out there and he's a top 15 fantasy quarterback over the first 6 weeks.
I mean, listen.
Just nuts. I mean, it should have been Stephen Morris's job, let's be real. But
I'm not going to sit here and throw like a party, but I do recognize the circumstance he was in. You know, there's certain guys that, like we were talking about Jamal Williams having to deal with the Brett Hundley situation and this like bizarro world here. We had Jacoby Brissett being thrown in, or Mitchell Trubisky, who was asked to only like complete 9 passes a game. I mean, you know, there's certain guys, you can't hold it against them. It was coaching.
Yeah. And Jared Goff the year before just looking like Bambi back there. And then all of a sudden everyone's like, yeah, he might be a top 30 fantasy quarterback. And then look at him. He finished as the number 13 or whatever it was.
Yeah, I had him all over the place in those 2 QB leagues. I'm so happy.
Oh, man. You should have told us.
Well, but this is my theory, and I'll say it now for all of you guys. And this is kind of what we're talking about with Alex Smith. If you're in a 2-quarterback league, you need to take your second quarterback needs to be someone that no one else really cares about, but who is not going to compete for their job.
Yeah.
Okay. And that was Jared Goff last year. I knew he was the guy, and I was like, perfect. I can take him late still, but he's not going to compete for the job. And that is the number one thing.
Well, tell us who it is this year, because we need to know.
Oh, well, I'm all in on my quarterbacks 9 times out of 10, I take at the very end. I'm not kidding you guys. I wait until the last 2 picks before my kickers and defense, and I take a combo of Blake Bortles, Case Keenum, Alex Smith every time. And I feel great about it.
You hear that, Tags? Blake Bortles.
Mitch Trubisky should be in there.
She didn't even think about Mitch Trubisky. She said Blake Bortles.
Oh, no, I love Mitch too, but he's going a little bit earlier because there's a little bit of a hype train for him, at least in the industry. So I usually don't quite get him. But those 3 guys no one likes at all. It's hilarious.
Alex Smith and Mitch Trubisky, that's perfectly fine with me.
Yeah, me too.
All right, Brandon, on to your number 1, and then Tags, we'll close it out.
Oh man, it is so hard to come up with this number 1 pick because kind of those quarterbacks, frankly, I'm fine with them, for sure. But I would say, Emmanuel Sanders, I think, is a forgotten man, and Demaryius Thomas. Again, I just want to reemphasize these 2 guys for 3 seasons in a row both put up 1,000 yards apiece. And this was also when Peyton Manning was terrible. Wow. And when Trevor Siemian was there for his first season. You guys, they both together were able to put up over 1,000 yards 3 seasons in a row. And then, by the way, Demaryius Thomas had 2 other seasons on top of that where he had 1,000 yards, and Eric Decker had 1,000 yards opposite him. So he continuously is able to put up 1,000 yards and have the other guy put up 1,000 yards. I'm not saying that's necessarily going to happen, but I think that is definitely a possibility. And I still think that his floor is incredibly high. I mean, he only played in 12 games last season because he was hurt. He still got 555 yards and 2 touchdowns, which, isn't great. But did you see Trevor Siemian play football? I just want to be clear, you guys. Huge upgrade. Huge upgrade.
Emmanuel Sanders right now is going ADP 37 for wide receivers. Even if he puts up 800 yards, that's a good value.
Yeah. And by the way, with his injuries, you knew when he was out, it wasn't like he couldn't be replaced. So I do want to point that out. Some people with injuries, like Gronk, that's one of the big complaints, right? Is that sometimes he's going to be a decoy or sometimes he's not going to play and it's going to be the last second. Emmanuel Sanders, it was like a clear injury. So, again, I think he's going to be fine. But people are really down on him and I'm going a little bit higher on him because I think he'll bounce back.
What's the difference really between him and Jordy Nelson?
I mean, where do you want me to start? No, I'm trying.
I'm saying this because I think a lot of people would ask this question, not because I agree with it. I mean, Jordy Nelson was miserable last year. He played all 16 games. Like you said, Sanders only played 12. And Jordy Nelson, he had Aaron Rodgers for part of that time, and he was horrible with Aaron Rodgers.
Absolutely. And also, I would say this, that when you saw what Emmanuel Sanders could do once he did get the ball in his hands, it wasn't like there was any sort of downgrade in his playing skills. At least in the way that I was watching the tape. And by the way, everyone has their own interpretation, I guess, of what happened here. But to me, in terms of the Denver Broncos, they were even using him on shorter pass routes because Trevor Siemian was struggling so bad. But he still was getting after the catch. He was still trying to get it done. They just could not get it down the field. They couldn't get a first down, and that was all based on play calling. But in terms of his skill set, it did not look, at least to me and my eyes when watching the tape, that his skill set had deteriorated at all. And again, he is playing in the same team, the same building, with the same players for the most part, except for this big upgrade at quarterback, which I like as well. Whereas Jordy's never played without Aaron Rodgers. I mean, we don't. Who is this person out in Oakland? And by the way, what's going on with Gruden and Derek Carr? What a bizarre cast of characters in Oakland. Yes. I have no idea what's going on there. Whereas I think Denver is actually a very kind of traditional built team.
So predictable.
Yeah, but I like that. Thank you. I want to know. Thank you.
All right, Tags, on to your number one. I'm assuming it's Kevin White.
Yeah, obviously. No, it's Sony Michel, and it's not really that close. I looked at his ADP before we started. It's 61, his ADP. I'm not kidding. Is that if I look at my cheat sheet, I obviously draft for value, and you get as much as you can, while being, getting the guy you want. Sony Michel is somebody I think about in the third round. And I'm not even.
I've got him in the top 40. Yeah, man.
Yeah, I'm not even, that's the thing, is just once it gets to the fourth round, I know that if I'm playing with someone that knows kind of how I feel, they'll take him before me. I think Justin Boone, we did a recent industry mock. Justin Boone took him in the fourth round ahead of me, and I was upset because I was hoping I would get him there. But in most drafts, I'm able to wait. And if, Brandon, you mentioned going wide receiver heavy, I usually get a running back in the first round, rounds 2 and 3, usually wind up with wide receivers. I'm not attached to any certain strategy, but reaching for Sony Michel in the fourth round is easy for me. He plays in the top 3 scoring offense. They've been a top 3 scoring offense every single year that Tom Brady's been the starter under Bill Belichick. That's obviously huge. I released an article today that talked about what does team scoring mean for fantasy football. And essentially, if you have a high scoring offense, you have a good shot at finishing as a top 12 running back. And Sony Michel, people are overestimating the volatility in the Patriots backfield. In DFS, I was able to use both Deion Lewis and Rex Burkhead last year. We knew what their roles were. And I think Rex Burkhead is still going to be viable. The Patriots are the one team in the NFL who exploits their enemies, their weaknesses. The Patriots, going by my method of strength of schedule, it's a little bit different, and if you guys can look it up on the site if you guys want. But the Patriots have the easiest schedule for running backs this year, and I do expect them to exploit that. There's a reason they spent the equity that they did, a first-round pick on Sony Michel, when this is a team who historically does not spend money on running backs. And when people talk about, they're going to have people do this and that, I want to go back through the running backs that they've had on their roster. Let's talk about this. LeGarrette Blount.
Very good.
Is he a 3-down back?
Yeah.
No.
And also has one of the best elusive ratings for numerous years in a row.
Blount, can he catch passes? No. Answer is no. Stephen Ridley had a really bad fumbling issue. Wasn't working much on third downs.
He was really good for a while in fantasy.
Mike Gillislee. Was he used in the passing game? I think he caught one pass the entire year before he was benched. You go back, you keep going back in time. Shane Vereen, he was a third down back. He was never workhorse. They have a true 3-down running back in Sony Michel, and I think that's why they drafted him. They got Isaiah Wynn, the guy who he worked with in college, obviously, was one of his offensive linemen, so there's going to be some chemistry there. But Tom Brady is on the way down, guys, and I'm sorry to say it. And I don't want to see it. For as many people as give me crap, because we get your emails, guys, as many people give Bobby and I crap about saying he's not the GOAT, he's my number 2 quarterback all time. So it's not, I don't want to see him fade, but I'm sorry, this is the last year. This is it. And I see a decline, and I think that the Patriots know it, and I think they're going to shift towards the run game a lot more this year. Sony Michel is going to finish as a top 18 running back.
I got a real problem here, and this is why I say I actually am all about diversifying. There's no one that's on all my teams. And I actually will sometimes say, okay, I have way too much of this guy, I got to stop. His fumbling issues, 12 fumbles in college. Bill Belichick will hate you.
You're right.
And that's my thing. I'm fine with it. If it hits, it is a home run. But if he fumbles twice in the first couple games, Bill Belichick could Mike Gillislee out of there.
He would murder him.
So I'm a little worried. I just don't want him to cough up the ball. If he can hold on to the ball, I'm with you 110%. But man, because I know Bill Belichick, that scares me.
Let's say that here's some running backs who are being drafted ahead of him. Derrick Henry, Kenyon Drake, Jay Ajayi, Alex Collins, Darius Geis, Rashad Penny, Mark Ingram, who's suspended for 4 games, Lamar Miller, I'm fine with that, Deion Lewis, and then you get to the like guys like Marshawn Lynch are drafted in the same range. Like that's the thing.
I'd even draft him over LaShawn McCoy and Joe Mixon, man. I'm all in on Sony Michel.
I'm in on Sony Michel. I wouldn't take him over Mixon or LaShawn McCoy, but he's definitely someone that I consider. I think I have him right now as my number 15 running back. So yeah. I'm high on him. And like the thing is he's going outside the top 5 rounds. Like on average, he's going in the 6th round of 12-team leagues. So I'll take him in the 4th round every time.
It's funny. I was going to say Sony Michel too, but again, I knew you were going to bring him up, so I didn't. He's also going to get so many goal line opportunities. I understand James White was the guy in the playoffs last year. Rex Burkhead did it for a little bit, but Sony Michel is more built to be a goal line back than either of those guys. And the Patriots have more goal line running back situations than any other team in football, and it's not even close year in and year out. I'm a huge believer. I like Sony Michel. My number 1 guy, though, you just mentioned him, Tags, is Marshawn Lynch. Marshawn Lynch, I know Doug Martin's there and everyone's excited about the muscle hamster who was just horrible last season. Marshawn Lynch was really good. I don't think a lot of people realize just how good he was. In terms of yards after contact, number 1 in the NFL. They improved their offensive line. I think Derek Carr is going to be a lot better this year if he's not, battling the back and the leg issues that he was dealing with. Marshawn Lynch last year he was a running back too. And all of a sudden, why is he being drafted as RB33?
Brandon, what's your take on Lynch?
Again, I have just a very weird feeling about the Raiders this year. I'm having a hard time analyzing them, doing projections. I'm confused. I feel like it's 5 years ago. It's a weird team. So I think that's part of it. I think there are a lot of question marks as to just what this team looks like. I think it was very scary watching Derek Carr and Amari Cooper play last season, which just kind of has cast the shadow, I think, on the team as a whole. And then, like you said, though, Marshawn Lynch played better than what a lot of people think. But the whole team, it was a very odd, disappointing year for them. Also because people had too high of expectations going in. But now with Gruden, who's weird. Is that, I know that's not, hashtag analysis, weird, but it feels, difficult to predict. And I think that's why people are not with him. I will get some Marshawn Lynch in my life though, because I agree with you. I think there's a possibility there. I'm not a Doug Martin girl. I don't understand that. I also think there's a possibility that's where DeMarco Murray ends up.
Interesting.
Now, with the 2 veterans there, Lynch, I'm just worried about him retiring at any minute, and I could see it. Like, Doug Martin playing behind the offensive line in Tampa, I think there was a mix of things. I think he's a little bit of a head case, and if he gets his head on right, he's got multiple 1,400-yard seasons. Do I think it's possible that it turns into a timeshare? Yeah. But for the people expecting so many rushing attempts out of the Oakland backfield, know this. John Gruden, for as much as he talks about turning back the clock to 1998 and all that crap, none of his last 8 teams have finished top 10 in rushing attempts.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a good point.
I'm just okay on it. I guess my thing is, if it's all about the construction prior to Marshawn Lynch for your team, right? If you're in dire need and you're like, I need to hit a home run here, and at least I think this guy's going to be the number 1 guy, I'm okay with it. If it's someone that I'm like, ooh, the upside, I don't know if I feel that, but I think Chris Thompson's being really underdrafted. And Darius Geis, frankly. Alex Smith had the number 1 accuracy for passes to running backs like over the last 5 seasons. They're going to get a lot of work in the passing game. I love this Gruden offense. I know we've already talked about Alex Smith and him being a baller, but I actually think these running backs are going to benefit from that as well.
I think Alex Smith could win the MVP this year. I think he's a dark horse.
I don't know if the team's good enough to do that, but I think Alex Smith is an underrated quarterback for sure.
He is so good, man. If they just let him loose, he goes to a different offense and they just let him sling the ball.
He was one of the most accurate passers down the field last season at 20 yards or more. And people don't know that.
He had the best rating in the NFL for deep passing. He had the most yards by a long, I think it was by like over 300 yards, more than any other passer when it comes to deep passing. And people are still telling me, for whatever reason, that Patrick Mahomes is an upgrade.
Oh, I know. The Patrick Mahomes hype is out of control.
So crazy. I saw somebody had him on Twitter as their number 5 fantasy quarterback this year.
A lot of people are saying this stuff, but I'm like, what are you guys watching? And then like, no, if you saw his college tape. And I'm like, you guys, college is not the NFL. I also want to just scream that at the top of my lungs. Like, it's not the NFL. It's not. And he's in a tough division in terms of corners. I don't know what's going on. I'm confused.
I am very happy that other people are drafting Pat Mahomes because I will not be drafting him anywhere. Even with, same as Tag said, I don't remember who we were talking about, Isaiah Crowell. I would not draft Pat Mahomes in a standard league. Not with my last pick.
I would. I mean, he's, for me, he's right in the area of Trubisky. Maybe the offense will be better because they've been in place. He's had a year to learn it. I don't know. I think that he's a slight upgrade over Trubisky in terms of cost, no, that's why I'll end up with Trubisky because I'm not willing to pay, the top 13, top 15 pick for Mahomes.
Agreed. I also would just wait and get Blake Bortles. Boom!
That's a good way to end the show on Blake Bortles.
That's a horrible way. You two can high five on your way out.
All right, guys. That's all for today's show. Brandon, as always, it was a pleasure. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks to the sponsor of today's show, YourRules.com. If you go to Your Rules, check out the new fantasy football platform that they have going on with all kinds of customizable options. That's YourRulz.com. For Mike Tagliere, I'm Bobby Sylvester. Thanks for listening and enjoy your football.
I just wanted you to watch me dissolve.